What's going on, YouTube? This is Rybo back at the Fake Bench, and today I have another cut or carry knife review. Today looking at the Cold Steel Tuff-Lite. So this little knife is one that's been on my list for a while, so I finally picked one up. This is a $30 knife or so. It is my third Cold Steel, I believe. And this is a very interesting knife to me in a number of ways, and so I've been really eager to take a look, and so I've been carrying it for a little while and have some thoughts. So let's do quick size comparison and then we'll jump into the review. So you have your Cold Steel Tuff-Lite. You have a knife that I don't think gets enough praise in the Kaiser Mini Sheepdog, which is, I'm a big fan of that knife. And you have the Dragonfly 2. And then just for good measure, let's bring out the Delica. So you can see it's a small knife. It's not, too small. It's definitely kind of one of those, fifth pocket of your jeans kind of knife or knives. It's a knife that I tend to carry just kind of bumming around the house. It would not be my primary everyday carry knife, but it is what I've called in the past kind of a niche knife, which can be super fun. So, what are the things that I like about the Cold Steel Tuff-Lite? Well, first of all, we'll just start with the scales. So, this is I think it's Grivex or something like that. It's just their version of I don't want to call it their version of FRN or something like that, but it's their kind of plasticky handle material that they use a lot. I really like it. I think that the texture on this is really nice. It's aggressive without being overly aggressive, as some Cold Steels tend to be. It's comfortable. It's smooth but still grippy, if that makes sense. And I am a big fan of it, both in looks and also in function. So I think it's a great option for a knife like this. The scales in general, I like the cutouts, and I like the general shaping of the scales. I think they look pretty good. I think they feel really nice in the hands, and so overall, I like what they've done with the scales. I also love the blade. I mean, obviously that's kind of the defining factor of this knife. It's a very different style. I tend to like, the cleavery kind of blades. I don't know if you'd really call this a Wharncliffe, maybe, but these kind of straight edge blades I tend to gravitate towards, not because I think they're a perfect everyday carry option, because they're definitely not, but I think they, what they do well, they do really well. They're easy to sharpen, especially if you are a freehand sharpener. I now use the Spyderco system, which the Sharp Maker. But I used to be freehand stone sharpener, and this knife is going to be very easy to sharpen, especially in the steel, which is AUS 8A, I believe. Yeah. So going to be easy to sharpen, going to be easy to maintain for just about anyone, and it's going to do some things really well. If you, like me, primarily use your everyday carry knife to open packages, open mail, cut food, that kind of thing, this knife is going to do a lot of that pretty well. It's not going to be the best, probably food knife, but it's going to open packages, cut ties, cable ties, rope, that kind of thing. It's going to do that stuff really well. And for a $30 knife that's this small and this ergonomic, that's an awesome thing. So I really like the blade. It has its shortcomings, but it's a great utility blade, which I think is the purpose of the knife. Other things that I like, the ergonomics are excellent. Really excellent. I have a little bit wider, larger hands. This knife is really fantastic. You have this right here, this kind of cutout, which for me fits the hand just perfectly. You have the two finger choils there, which I think are just perfect. And you actually have jimping where your thumb lands. One of my issues with knives is typically the jimping is too early. But when you're grabbing the knife like this, my hand tends to hit right there. I think that's really nice. And overall, one of my indicators of a good small knife is I get a comfortable grip on the knife, and really the blade is the only thing exposed. That it's very efficient in that way, and this knife definitely fits that bill. Other knives that do that very well, like the Dragonfly 2, the FRN Chaparral, do that really, really well. So I really like that about this knife. Other things that I like, the deployment is very good. So this is using kind of the fake Spyderco Spidey hole deployment, and I think it works really, really well. I don't have this knife anymore, but one of the knives that this kind of reminds me of is the CRKT Pilar. I think that would be a really good head-to-head. This knife, in my opinion, outperforms it almost at every level. But one of the issues I had with the Pilar was it was kind of difficult for me to deploy. And I think a lot of times when you have these, I'm just going to call them fake Spyderco hole deployments, they're not really that easy to use. Spyderco is the master at that with the round hole. But a lot of times, the kind of other adaptations of that are just not really user-friendly. This one works very, very well, and I like it a lot. So it's very easy to deploy, and so I like that. Other things that I like about the knife, it's super lightweight. Cold Steel sometimes for their light knives, it's kind of a joke because they're not really light, but this one I think is very light. I obviously don't have the scales or the scale, I guess, to weigh it, but it is very, very light, and I think it does, not disappear in the pocket necessarily because of some things we'll talk about, but it's a great, great lightweight knife. Other things that I like. I can't really decide about, this lanyard hole. I understand what they're doing. It kind of fits the design of the knife a little bit, but I can't decide. It's cool because it's different from your typical just round hole kind of thrown on there. So I guess I'll give them credit for that. But yeah, I don't know. I can't decide. I guess I'll merge things I like to things I don't like by saying I like the just lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry. I like the Triad lock in principle. I love the idea of the Triad lock. So I like that about it. Unfortunately, functionally, it drives me insane. And this is the second Cold Steel that I've had with a Triad lock, and I have the same issue on both, but it's much, much worse here. So the Triad lock is very similar to a traditional back lock. You can look this up, but it has added strength because there's a pin where the 2 points lock on. So I love that in principle, but what I've found in both examples of the Triad lock that I've owned is that it functionally creates a difficult back lock to disengage. And so this one is the worst that I've ever had. When you press this, I don't know if you can hear that. And I think if I do this again, it sticks like crazy. This is not going to be a back lock like the Delica where you do that and it just drops shut. This is very stiff, and even once you disengage, because you have that pin there, the blade is not going to fall free. Because even right there, when I have this lifted up like that, this lock is not disengaged. This is still very much a locked blade. So you have to mash this back lock down all the way. And that is, one, not very comfortable on your finger. So you're going to kill your finger doing that. And two, it's just really annoying when you're trying to get the blade out and back in the pocket. You have to really think about closing the blade. It's just one of those added steps that it's not enough to really make you hate the knife or anything, but it's just enough to drive you crazy and kind of second guess if you really want to carry the knife, especially when you have something like this that's just going to drop shut like that. So while I like the strength of the Triad lock, on a knife like this, it's not really needed. And if it's going to have, I don't know, QC issues or really just, to make a $30 knife, right? Like I understand that there's going to be tolerance issues. If you're going to have sticking issues like that, I'd prefer just a traditional back lock and make me enjoy the knife a little bit more. I think that would be more than strong enough for this knife. And that's really the primary thing that drives me crazy. Second thing that drives me crazy, however, is not surprising for Cold Steel people, the pocket clip, and particularly the pocket clip with this little I don't know what you want to call this, with this little divot or indentation in the blade, or in the scales. Now, I mentioned a second ago, I really like that indentation here because I think it fits the hand very, very well. And so I totally understand why they would do it on both sides, because you can't make the knife ambidextrous unless you have that on both sides, because you see you can switch the clip, which, by the way, third thing I dislike is I think this looks terrible and maybe there's a better way to do that. Not a big deal. But so I understand that in making the knife ambidextrous, you want to add that palm swell, or not palm swell, but that kind of divot on both sides of the blade. Functionally, it's awful because this knife is difficult to get in and out of the pocket because you have this pocket clip coming down lower than the rest of this, right? And so you have a cold steel pocket clip, which is subpar at best, and you add to the fact that you're now coming down on a spot that's lower than the rest of the scales here, and then you have a ramp that is very, very low. And so what I've found is that this knife is very difficult to get in and out of the pocket. It can be done. It's not as bad as some knives that I've seen, but it's enough, again, to just drive you absolutely crazy. And so, you know, it turns what could be a really, really fantastic knife. You add those two issues, being the Triad lock sticking and the pocket clip, and it just, oh, it's so frustrating because the knife is so close to being a shining star. Yeah, so that drives me nuts. Let's see, anything else? I guess the only other thing is that I can't carry this in the traditional orientation that I'd want to, which is tip up. Not a huge deal for a knife this small. It's not a primary knife, but I would have liked to see the pocket clip on the other side. Like maybe you could have done something to where you cut across this and you wouldn't have as much of the clip issue, but just a thought. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Cut or carry for me, this is still a carry. I still really, really like this knife, although it does drive me a little bit crazy. For 30 bucks, I think it's an excellent value. This knife has really impressed me, and I really, really like it. So hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.